Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today, this is going to be the last deep crankbait video you will ever need to watch. We're going to go through everything you need to know about the deep crankbait, everything from rod, reel, line selection, bait selection, how to fish it out on the water, what you're looking for. We're going to break down literally everything about a deep crankbait in today's video, so stay tuned and let's get right into it. And before we get into today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. What the Deep Dive app is you can go to your local lake right here. You can type in your summer conditions or any conditions. So today we have summer conditions. We're fishing offshore, not a wind protected area, no aquatic vegetation present where we're fishing. Largemouth bass is what we're targeting and the lake level is normal. You can go today, afternoon, morning, anytime that you want to select, and then you can go ahead and select on this icon right here. You can pick, we have stained water today, and it'll give you a bunch of options to choose from for the day when fishing. So 10-inch worm, Carolina rig, deep diving crankbait. So that's going to be what we're fishing with today, and it'll show you all different types of stuff, like what colors to use, where to fish it, screenshots of a fish finder, what you should be looking for, screenshots of navionics or satellite imagery on what you should be looking for, even how to retrieve it, and the rod, reel, line setup to have you catching more fish. So if you want to support the channel, go ahead and download the Deep Dive app in the description below. There'll be a link. You'd be helping me out a ton by supporting them. You're supporting me. But for now, let's get into today's video and start talking about the deep diving crankbait. So before we go into anything else about the deep diving crankbait, the number one thing to talk about is the bait selection, because that's obviously the most important part with this setup here. So today I'm going to be throwing a Crush 300 DD here. This is like a 15-ish foot diving crankbait. And the reason that I went with this one is so that I can get it a little bit deeper down in the water column. So there's two approaches when it comes to a deep diving crankbait. You can either pick one that will go a foot or two below the depth of water that you're fishing. So if you're fishing in 10 foot, you'd want a 12-foot diving crankbait, and that'll gently tick the bottom and you can reel it pretty quickly, and it most likely will not get hung up. It'll work its way through everything just fine, and you'll be able to catch fish doing that. But you can also go up in size a little bit more. So I picked a 15-foot diving crankbait to fish in about 10 foot of water today. And what I'll do is I'll actually reel it even slower. So these fish have had a lot of pressure. They've probably seen a lot of deep diving crankbaits, and a lot of people want to reel them very quickly. So if you go with this one, it will stay down in 10 foot of water and gently tick the bottom at a much slower speed. And you'll be able to bounce it off that cover down there and get reaction bites doing that. So that's what we're going to go with for today. However, when it comes to choosing deep diving crankbaits, you can see I have 3 boxes of them behind me here. I have a ton of deep diving crankbaits, and it seems overwhelming when you're trying to pick them because there's so many different sizes and colors, but we're going to break it down for you really easy today. The first thing is 6th Sense makes it really easy. They have the C series, which is probably one of my favorite deep diving crankbaits. It's the C6, the C10, the C15, the C20, and then the C25. And the number literally indicates about how deep that bait's going to go. So you can just pick your depth of water. You're fishing 10 foot of water, C10's the bait for you. You're fishing 15 of water, you get the C15 and you're good to go. So you can pick that way, or you can do like I just said, you can throw the C15 in 10 foot of water and get it to bounce a little bit slower down there. They also have the 300 and the 500 DD, and the difference between the C series and the DD series is it's a more flat-sided bait. So it's a little bit more of a subtle presentation, and like I said, we have a lot of pressure out here. It's a little bit less rattling, a little subtler in the water, so that's the one we're going with for today. And I even have another box out here. I don't just fish 6th Sense crankbaits. I have a whole bunch in here. The Strike King XD series is amazing. So the 3XD, the 5XD, the 6XD, those are awesome. I have the Lucky Craft ones. This is the RTO versions. So this is the 3.5 XD. They have different ones. They all have different meanings. I got Rapala DTs in here. I got Profound crankbaits. I have Demiki crankbaits. They all have a time and a place. They're different bait sizes, different colors, all different stuff like that. So you could pick from a whole bunch of different crankbaits when you're doing so, but the one thing you'll notice about my deep diving crankbait box is that there's 2 colors in the entire box. There's either a chartreuse for some stained water, or there's a solid white, and that is it. Those are the only two colors that I throw. So if you're picking a bunch of deep diving crankbaits, focus more on getting a bunch in different depths ranges. So get a C6, a C10, a C15, and buy each of them in one of these colors, a chartreuse and a white, and you'll have your bases covered no matter what type of water conditions you might face for that day. So that's the key with bait selection. Now we'll jump into some rod and reel selection to have you catching more fish as well. So the next thing to talk about when it comes to fishing a deep crankbait is your rod and reel and line selection. That's actually a very important part when fishing these crankbaits. Your regular square bill rod just isn't going to cut it on most of these deep crankbaits. While you might be able to handle something like one of these C6 baits on your square bill rod, the rest of these just aren't going to do it. They're going to pull way too hard. They're going to be exhausting to fish all day, or simply just overload your rod and not make it effective to fish whatsoever. So the rod here, you do have to kind of have a specialized rod for deep crankbait fishing. There's a couple options that you can choose from, and you can choose some different actions to throw some of the bigger baits, like these C500 or these 500 DDs here. These things weigh over an ounce and they pull really hard, so you're going to need a really big rod to throw something like that. Honestly, this rod that I have in my hands here probably won't even handle that 500 DD very well. You may be able to throw it and get away with it, but it's not really the ideal setup. This is more what I call my mid-depth cranking setup. I'll throw everything from the C6 up to the C20 and the 300 DD on this rod, and then I have another rod to throw like the C25s and the 500 DDs, or if you fish the Strike King versions, those 10XDs, you're going to need a very specialized rod for that. But this, I can throw such a wide variety of crankbaits on that this is the one that I choose. This is the Cash and Icon deep crankbait rod right here. It's rated for 3/8 to an ounce, and it has a moderate fast action, but it's not a glass rod. I don't really like glass rods. They're way too heavy, and you don't feel anything. So while that crankbait's bouncing on the bottom, you have really no clue what it's doing. I've been fishing this one around today. You can feel if you're stuck in the grass, you can feel if you hit a stump, you can feel a little bit of everything down there while you're dragging that crankbait around with an all graphite rod. It's just a composite blend to make it have that moderate fast action in it. And then when it comes to the reel here, this is a Corrado K 200. This has a bigger spool than what I usually fish on my MGLs. The bigger spool allows you to cast farther and hold more line, because you're going to want to make a very long cast with your deep crankbait. So I spool this up with straight 12-pound test fluorocarbon, and that's what I use to make a long cast. Most of these crankbaits are tested on like 10 or 12-pound test fluorocarbon, so whatever the running depth is on the package, that's going to be on a very long cast on 10 or 12-pound test. If you go up in size, if you go to like a 15-pound test, you're going to lose about a foot off your diving depth. If you go up to 17-pound test, you're going to lose about another foot. So every line size you go up, you're going to lose about 1 foot in diving depth. So you can play around with your line size if you need to get the right running depth of your crankbait as well. If you want to throw a bigger crankbait in shallower water, you can throw a bigger line and it'll keep it up higher. But generally, I run just straight 12-pound test fluorocarbon on this setup right here, and I'll choose my crankbait specifically for the diving depth. The only other thing to mention is I run a 6:2 gear ratio here. You want something with a lower gear ratio 1, so you can fish it and feel like you're working that crankbait quickly, but you're actually working it a lot slower down there, and that'll allow you to get more bites. And that lower gear ratio just makes it easier to pull that crankbait in when it has that hard resistance while you're pulling it in there. So that's the setup, and if you want to check out any of this gear, it'll all be linked down below. By purchasing through any of those links down there, you'll be supporting the channel a ton, and I'd really appreciate that. And if you want to get any of the 6th Sense crankbaits, you can use my code Quince. You'll save 10% off your order, and you'll be getting some new crankbaits to get out there and catch some fish. So now that we talked about all the gear, the last thing is spots, and then we're going to go out on the water and go ahead and catch a couple fish doing this. So spots, you're going to fish this. Literally, you can cover anything. You can fish weed edges, you can cover points with this, you can just pull up on spots and cast around. What we're going to be doing today is actually looking for shell bars, and we're actually graphing for them behind the console. I've also been to this lake numerous times, so I have most of them marked, but we're going to be finding hard spots and isolated stumps or stump fields that are out there. And then we'll throw this crankbait and cover that water out there. Some of these hard spots are only the size of the front deck of the boat. Some of them could be 50 by 50 yard sections, and that crankbait will allow you to cover all that water. And if there's any aggressive fish in there looking to get some bait, they'll go ahead and grab that crankbait. We've seen a couple bass chasing some bait today, a lot of activity on some of these offshore spots. So we'll be throwing this guy around hoping to catch some fish. So now that we know what we're looking for out there on the water, let's head out there. We'll hit a couple points, a couple shell bars, and we'll see if we can catch us a couple. We'll show you all about how to fish the deep diving crankbait out there to get more bites.
It's like 10 yards from the...
Oh my gosh.
Get blasted?
Yes. Got him that time. Bad one. There's the first one on the deep crankbait right there. Lined up on this road bed right here. We're going to show you a little bit about how to fish this crankbait once we get this one off. I'm hoping there's a little school of them there because we got one.
He's got a leech in his mouth too.
I know, in the same spot too. We got one on the crankbait. We had one blast it, completely knocked slack in the line. You saw it kept reeling, and then this guy caught up and got it. So maybe there's a couple more down there, but we're gonna get back to fishing. Show you how it's done on the deep crankbait. See you, buddy. All right, so as you can see right here on my 360, you can see that road bed coming out to the side there, and then there's a big shell bar out here, and that's actually where I caught the fish. I didn't catch it on that road bed. So there's a big high spot right there, and we're only in like 8 foot of water, which is fine. Like I said, we're throwing a 12, 14 foot diving crankbait in 8 foot of water, but what I'm doing is I'm getting it down there quick, and then I slow my reel down a lot, and you can literally see my rod tip. It's bouncing off every rock down there, and I'm just keeping it moving in that strike zone, bouncing off rocks and trying to create that reaction strike. So in the summertime, when you have these people, like this is a very obvious spot. There's a boat ramp right there. So a lot of people know about this spot and have fished it today. There was actually a tournament going on. We couldn't even roll up on here earlier today because there was so many boats on it. We didn't even have a chance to get our boat on it. So we came back a little bit later. These fish have probably seen a million baits today, but by me reeling my crankbait a little bit slower and really deflecting it off of everything, it's giving it a much different look than what other people have thrown out there today, and just can trigger a couple extra reaction bites. You either have to go super finesse in the summertime and really get them to bite your bait like a drop shot or something like that, which we've already done a couple videos on, or you can go super power fishing like this and draw a big bite, but you have to really get them to bite it, like react to it. They're not just going to track this down and eat it. So we're going to keep grinding this away down here on this road bed, see if we can get us a couple more. That might be grass. We're gonna line back up here and fire back out there and see if we can get us another one. And as we were talking about in the beginning of today's video, you can use this crankbait as a search tool in finding some of these areas. While we did find this spot, like I said, I've been to this lake before. I knew this road bed was here, but you can search the area of the road bed and find that sweet spot within. And if you decide to throw another bait in there, you can, or you can just keep throwing the crankbait in there. You can do whatever you want. So like right there, I actually caught grass, which there's like a small hard spot where they're laid up in here, and the rest of it is all grass around the outside. So I actually threw that bait a little bit too far, and by using the crankbait, I can cast around this area to figure out where the key sweet spot is. So instead of me having to drag a bait all over and feel where they're at, I can just fan cast around and go, okay, with this graphite rod rather than the glass ones, you can say, okay, that's rock right there. You can throw over here, you'll be able to feel that's mushy, that's grass, and you can feel those sweet spots and work your bait around and really get your nice line up here. And that's the key with the deep crankbait, is you can just cover a lot of water. And as John and I have been talking about here, there is a billion shad jumping all over. Like if you just stop and look up the lake, you can see them flicking all out of the water and everything like that. So these fish are heavy shad eaters. They like to feed on shad, and that's one bait that they just really like to eat. So if you throw a deep crankbait that has a shad pattern to it and you get it in front of one and you cover enough water, eventually you'll run into one that's active and eats it. Today might not be the perfect day for it. We got glass calm conditions and bluebird skies, but we'll keep trying and see if we can get us another one. But this is a great morning technique, and it's also a great overcast, rainy day, windy technique as well. So we'll cover this little flat here and see if we can find us another. Oh, got that one. I don't think so. Nope, little one. I just wanted to keep them tight. Yep. All right, And there you can see I caught that fish way out there on a very long cast. And they don't have to be big ones to catch on the deep crankbait. That's like a 12-incher, so not a giant fish, but you can catch a ton of fish out here on a deep crankbait. That 300 DD looks very big, but little fish will still eat it. Make that far cast, get that fish. I mean, that thing bit all the way out on the end of that cast. Thought it was a shad coming by, went and grabbed it. It's an excellent way to cover a ton of water, catch big fish, catch small fish, catch a lot of fish. So if you enjoyed today's video, check this one out right here. If you find fish with that deep crankbait, you need to be throwing this bait as a follow-up and you'll catch even more fish off those schools. We're gonna let this guy go, but I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hit that like button down below if you did, and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you have some more fishing videos coming up.